Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting Propagandacast with me, Imperial Dane. And today I have for you a 1 vs 1 on Beaux Lowlands. And some of you might already be asking, but hey, Dane, you stupid bastard, haven't we already had Beaux Lowlands? And then I say yes, but you hadn't had Beaux Lowlands quite like this. Hurrah! And some of you might say boo, and I'm saying shut up, or it's a trip to the Eastern Front for you. Now then. Beaux Lowlands already we've had this through already, and divided by river, divided by road, trees, fun stuff, barns, victory points spread out, thus requiring a slightly more larger strategy than what most people are used to, requiring, well, how do I want to defend this, how do I want to attack this, and does this tank really go with my hat? So then, but the thing that makes this match interesting is the players, and you might already be going, what could that mean? In the northern corner, in fact, we have LatrodectusUnloaded. Latrodectus sounding like something from an Italian opera, except the unloaded bit. And if I knew how to sing an Italian opera, I'd probably try to have a bit of fun with it, but I can't. But nonetheless, here is Latrodectus, 2nd SS Panzer Division, Das Reich, Ausklärungsabteilung, ready to show the armies who's the boss. And of course, who shall the army be? It shall be Rommelslayer. Yes, indeed, we'll be having two regulars here on the channel, Latrodectus and Rommelslayer, fighting against each other in a fight to the death. Well, not quite. I mean, they're still breathing and all that, so not quite that, but I suppose you could always imagine that afterwards one of them will be pulled back into some small room and shot because they failed. Although that would be a bit unfortunate, because then I wouldn't be getting any further replays from those chaps. But no, Rommelslayer here, 1st Infantry Division versus 2nd SS, Das Reich. And let us get right down to it. I said right down to it, mate. When I click on you, you're supposed to start. So there we go, starting up. Engineers, Kettenkrad, nothing unusual there. And for those wondering, well, why did I go for this? Well, partly due to the players, partly because I've already been looking through an hour's worth of replays, or at least it took me an hour to go through it all. There was certainly probably a lot more hours in it, including what I might believe is a good 2 vs 2 for the next Monday novice fight, if all goes well, and the person who sent it in doesn't get offended. And I got what I actually might be one of the very few games over an hour long, which I might actually cast, yes indeed, an over an hour long match. Of course, that's going to be requiring a day where I have a lot more time available and where I'm not already tired after having been to university. So, look forward to that in the near future, and let's hope I don't pass out in the effort. But Kettenkrad hanging westwards, all the Panzer Grenadiers are doing so as well. Gewehr 43 in hand for the Panzer Grenadier team number 1. Barracks is up, riflemen on the way, but the engineers are continuing westwards. Westwards ho. Panzer Grenadiers also going westwards. Everybody's going west. Nobody seems keen on the east. Riflemen arriving on the field and rather heading to the spot where the Panzer Grenadiers are. Engineers taking up position in this not entirely sure what sort of building this is supposed to be, but now they're running away. Panzer Grenadiers hoping to do a bit of harassment on Rommelslayer's units and a bit of resource intake, hoping to harass the units trying to seize territory right down there. Panzer Grenadiers continuing, but being hunted down by the engineers and riflemen, and Latrodectus rather realizes things are looking bad for his Panzer Grenadiers, immediately retreats them again. Knowing when to retreat and knowing when to fight is a good thing to know, and in this case, Latrodectus made the right move in getting the devil out of there, although then again he might also want to not continue hunting, but there we go. Other team of Panzer Grenadiers holding the line. One Panzer Grenadier goes down on the retreat, wounded, screaming in pain, but there are no Panzer Elite medics to pull him together. Again, Panzer Grenadiers opening up on the riflemen getting slightly away. 3rd Panzer Grenadier team arriving on the field, and looks like a 2nd Kettenkrad had also arrived and is immediately seizing territory right here in the east, while the Kettenkrad pulls away from the west, not seizing this victory point. No, it runs away to instead secure some munitions right away. But a rather interesting strategy so far from Latrodectus is rather banking on being able to seize as much territory as possible, and of course get that advantage away from Rommelslayer. Certainly not a bad one. Rommelslayer on the other hand, so far just the usual, lots of riflemen, lots of rifles on the field. Further Panzer Grenadiers advancing, and looks like some riflemen are getting cut down out in the open and forced to run away. Other riflemen also arriving, but they're sort of realizing they can't take on those Panzer Grenadiers on their own. Engineers continue in the west, not getting stopped by the Panzer Grenadiers, and now all the kitten crowds are heading east. Very interesting. And small duel here between the Panzer Grenadiers and the riflemen, quite a bit far away, but the Panzer Grenadiers will have the advantage at these ranges for sure, plus numerically and of course other bits. So there we go. But more riflemen are charging ahead. Panzer Grenadiers moving in here, trying to stop the engineers, but the engineers are opening up on them. Latrodectus, why are you moving your Panzer Grenadiers around like that? And now this is going to turn out to be a much heavier firefight, but Rommelslayer moves out into the open, but no, it's a small just to get over here, of course taking the path around, flanking about, and will he be doing the clever thing? Not quite. But it would be nice if he was actually... Yes, now he's moving up around the heavy cover, thus getting the drop on the Panzer Grenadiers, catching them in crossfire and forcing them to retreat. Excellent job there, Rommelslayer. Latrodectus, on the other hand, will have to see his lines collapse. Engineers running away, though, thus denying Rommelslayer for the time being any unit or territorial seizing, and even one engineer team has gone down. First unit lost for Rommelslayer. Latrodectus has only lost a few members of squads, but not entire units. And oh dear, Panzer Grenadiers forced into another full retreat. Rommelslayer charges ahead, rifles blazing. Oh dear, Panzer Grenadiers could be cut down. Oh dear, and what is this? Logistic company going up for LatrodectusUnloaded and his second SS, and further Panzer Grenadiers are now getting ready. 5 Panzer Grenadiers, no, my mistake, 4 Panzer Grenadier teams, and another goes down on the retreat, leaving behind only 2 of the 2 rather previously large teams. Not good. Logistic company soon up. What shall be Latrodectus going for? Scout cars? Vampire half-tracks? Who knows? We have certainly seen him using them before. Panzer Grenadiers engaging the riflemen right here. Riflemen running across this sort of wet ground. Negative cover again makes them easier to hit, easier to damage, and makes them move slower. So be careful about mucking about in the water. You're not here for a dip. You're here to fight the enemy. Riflemen and Panzer Grenadiers continuing sort of at the edges. Panzer Grenadiers under fire, riflemen as well. More Panzer Grenadiers arriving. Not sure what's going on here in the Logistic company. Apparently absolutely nothing. Panzer Grenadiers charging onwards from numerous sides. Further Gewehr 43s being equipped. Riflemen going down and running away. What's going on in the base? A supply yard for Rommelslayer. A supply yard. Riflemen running away and other riflemen opening up on the Panzer Grenadiers, who are now advancing in light and no cover at all. Riflemen might not able to win this fight, but they could still do some damage to the Panzer Grenadiers, which would certainly be good. Panzer Grenadiers being much more expensive to reinforce than riflemen, and that's certainly not something to remember. Again, this sort of manpower war, attrition fight. Basically, how much do you kill for and how much do you lose in the process. As long as you can keep things in your favor, you're probably most cases going to do pretty well. And looks like we have a small engagement here. Panzer Grenadiers out in the open, going down. Riflemen down though, but still 1 Panzer Grenadier 45, 1 rifleman about 26, 27, 28 manpower. Certainly cheap, although, oh dear, 2 riflemen immediately cut down there by Latrodectus' rather elite Panzer Grenadier. And a medic station going up for Rommelslayer, already now having lots of riflemen, but at the same time preparing for the long haul, getting ready with the medics. Certainly not a bad idea. And riflemen here engaging all of these Panzer Grenadiers, although they are a bit on their own. But further riflemen are arriving, heading ahead. And looks like Latrodectus is going straight for the Panzerjäger company and what is probably going to be armored cars. Riflemen slowly pulling back, although in this case I might actually have advocated a retreat. Instead, oh dear, they might actually find themselves having to retreat straight past all of these forces very soon. Riflemen advancing, veteran team 1 for these riflemen. 1 man down, 2 men, only 2 left. Oh dear, and they get slowed down. Latrodectus, you bugger. And there we go, 1 rifleman team cut down. The Panzer Grenadiers retreating. They're probably going to be in a much better state than those riflemen cut down, and that was even Rommelslayer's first veteran unit, immediately lost as well. Quite unfortunate. Certainly going to cost him a bit. But a Panzer Grenadier gets burned down on the retreat, thus evening things out quite a bit. But armored cars are arriving, and looks like more are getting ready from the Panzerjäger command. And the Funkwagen Vampire Half-Track Vampire, ready to siphon the resources from Rommelslayer and instead divert them to Latrodectus' war coffers. Riflemen retreating in the face of the armored car with its 20mm auto cannon. There was several variants of armored cars. There was this one, there was the heavy one, also which was later to become the Puma with the upgrade of the 50mm cannon, and there was also a variant of the half-track, in fact the leichte Schützenpanzerwagen, which was also turned into a sort of armored car. Difference was it was sort of a half-track rather than, well, an armored car. Plus there was also some reconnaissance tanks, plus whatever armored cars they could steal from the enemy, and they used French ones for a bit, plus some other bits. Scout cars moving about. Funkwagen advancing very cautiously, hoping not to get detected. Armored car opening up on the Strasbourg out in the open, although there's a mine awfully close. Will the armored car advance straight into Rommelslayer's mines? The mines of Rommelslayer. And assault rifles already getting equipped for some of the Panther grenades. Engineers getting gunned down. The STG-44 having been in development for quite some time. Der Führer not quite keen on automatic weapons, since he figured that would basically cause his troops to just waste ammunition, since they could just fire at full auto. The idea for the assault rifle basically came to fore when the Wehrmacht, after that dismaying small engagement right here, Panzer grenades doing their best for the assault rifles, having certainly these close range advantage due to the more bullets they can force out. But the Wehrmacht, at some stage after conducted a few tests, or not tests, what is it, the studies, rather figured that the usual range of combat is actually somewhere from 100 and 300 meters, and bolt action rifles don't really suit that. They needed something a bit more. Submachine guns didn't quite cut it either, and so the idea became for the assault rifles. And when it was finally shown to Der Führer in 1944, I believe it was around there, he finally said, well, that's actually a pretty great idea. I should call it the Sturmgewehr, of which assault rifle actually comes from. So there you go. And now the riflemen are being forced away by the armored car, blasting away at them. Engineers heading towards the center, riflemen and engineers towards the west as well. Armored cars, no, not an armored car. Instead we're seeing an M3 half-track from Rommelslayer. Rommelslayer actually liking the half-track with its quad mount AA gun. All well, unless, of course, my goodness, Latrodectus is already one step ahead. Marder 3 Panzerjäger on the field. Part of the much larger Marder series, which basically consisted of converting older tanks into tank hunters, since as tanks they were pretty much useless, including the Panzer 38T, which is the basis for the Marder 3. Which in fact became the basis for a lot of conversions. But the Marder 3 actually had two variants. There was the Pak 41, which is this one, and there was also one equipped with a Soviet field cannon, which had a slightly larger caliber. But the half-track charges ahead, hoping to do damage to the armored car, which it can. But the Marder 3 can do quite a bit more, knocking out the half-track in seconds. Small engagement here between Panzer grenades and riflemen. Riflemen not looking too good. Down to 3 men. They weren't even fully reinforced, as we can see. They are now forced to retreat. Will Latrodectus get the kill? Apparently not. But Rangers are instead hitting the field now, rather than after the half-track went kablooey and combusted. Rangers are now being summoned onto the field with their bazookas to turn the tide in the favor of the 1st Infantry Division against those nasty buggers of the 2nd SS. Marder 3 having a nice rest right there, conducting a bit of an overwatch mission in case something might charge ahead in terms of armor, but no, riflemen and rangers will be doing it instead. Armored car ready, but will it be able to provide enough firepower to hold it back? And looks like 4-man squads are now equipped for the Panzer Grenadiers, thus giving them more firepower. At the same time, though, any units that aren't already with 4 men will certainly have to be paid for that, of course, to get fully reinforced. So that, of course, is a bit of a problem. It's best when you actually can then train them fully. Still not bad, and you get a lot more firepower, and you certainly get more out of your assault rifle upgrade, since you then get 4 assault rifles for 75 munitions. Luftwaffe troops have arrived, thus meaning that he has gone for Luftwaffe doctrine, this Latrodectus, and it's time to go have a look at him. In fact, mines being laid down per Rommelslayer, good show there. Luftwaffe troops from the 17th Luftwaffe Division retreating, or possibly just some Luftwaffe security units from an AA gun or somewhere. Panzer grenades charging, 4 assault rifles in hand. Again, 4-man squads and assault rifles go hand in hand. Rangers and riflemen engaging versus Panzer grenades. Marder 3 actually gets a hit. Quite good, actually. Not the best units in dealing with infantry. Not really what they're supposed to be used for. Didn't quite have the assault gun role of other units. That was mostly due to the fact that it didn't quite have the armor to actually go close in such situations, and it didn't have any machine guns either, which rather limited its role. And generally, but as the war progressed, they went away from the tank hunter idea and basically went for the assault gun, which could deal with tanks and infantry and other nasty business. Although these Panzer guys need to be more careful, do not try to take points, but their assault rifles are still tearing through the riflemen. One, in fact, is able to shoot right past the fence, but really, Latrodectus don't stand about with the troops taking a point while they're under fire. Some of them will not even be able to fire back, and that's something you have to remember again. In fact, these Panzer guys are taking it. And Rommelslayer retreats. He had almost cut it down, and he retreats. For shame, Rommelslayer, for shame. But the armored cars pushing through here. Medics pulling in. Mines being laid down by the engineers. Not really looking good for Latrodectus, who did have the advantage for a brief one. But looks like Rommelslayer is turning the tide. Medics pulling in the wounded. Armored cars advancing. Luftwaffe troops standing about looking Luftwaffe or something. But more armored cars, in fact, arriving, and now they're charging ahead. The Kettenkrad, of course, being quite able to spot mines. Does so. With the armored cars, yes, indeed, opening up. Medics going for the long haul with their wounded. Oh dear, one doesn't make it. Shot in the back. The other one also getting a few shots through the head. Mine discovered again. Panzer grenades with offensive veterancy, thus increasing their rate of fire, accuracy, and reload. Well, that is part of rate of fire generally. And riflemen are now charging head. Rangers as well. No submachine guns for them. More riflemen there.
The Yankees are grabbing our territory.
And armored cars opening up on a bit of this and that, blowing apart the heavy cover as well. Heavy cover like this can be destroyed by some units, and of course, depending on the volume, the caliber of the fire, it can be blown to bits. Auto cannons can do some, although explosive weaponry like bazookas and such are better suited for it. And of course, denying your opponent cover is always a great idea. And my goodness, really nice move here by Rommelslayer, moving in, cutting off Latrodectus from all his resources. Of course, Latrodectus is stealing some fuel right here, so it isn't actually going to affect him this much. And Rommelslayer will certainly be lacking some fuel himself. But then he is rather relying on his infantry to do the trick. Rangers charging in towards the center. Armored cars providing overwatch, in fact, from this road. Opening up on the Rangers, who are out in the middle of it, gunning them down. My goodness. Panzer grenadiers firing away as well. Riflemen charging ahead. Bazooka rockets flying, damaging one of the armored cars. Sticky bombs are apparently ready for the riflemen as they're charging ahead. But they are getting slaughtered by the armored cars and the Panzer grenadiers running, scared, fearful. Shots and bazooka rockets flying around their ears while the armored cars protect them. And a Wirbelwind flak panzer has moved in, stopping the Rangers' harassment here in the east, opening up, telling them to stop with its quad mount. And certainly having a nice time with it, although not doing much except killing one Ranger. Latrodectus is currently in a bit of a spot of trouble, as you might have noticed. Rather penned in with his territory, Rommelslayer currently holds the advantage, having pushed through on all flanks despite armored cars, mortar fleets, and Wirbelwinds. Rommelslayer holds the advantage. The 1st Infantry Division is so far doing quite well compared to the 2nd SS Panzer Division. Armored cars are opening up all of these riflemen, forcing them away, but mines are being laid down. Defensive operations from Rommelslayer, allowing his riflemen to lay down mines. Rangers, though, getting cut down. Oh dear. And now tank traps being laid down right here in the west to prevent any movement through from vehicles. Not a bad idea at all. Rommelslayer, and of course another problem for Latrodectus, at least temporarily, until he managed to secure that bit here and get all that back, was population. He in fact lacked it, and that also meant he, for example, couldn't even reinforce his troops. But now it's all back, and a Panzer support command is up. Rommelslayer pooling together all of his troops, reinforcing. A Trier center could be of nice use here, and we are seeing support supply yard upgrades as well. Good show. And the motor pool is flashing, so something's going on there. Kettenkrad spotting the mines, armored cars blowing them up. And the riflemen are continuing here in the west to lay down their tank traps, hoping to prove a nuisance to any sort of armored vehicles trying to move through here, unless of course it's Panthers, in which case they're not really going to be caring. But armored cars already continuing the hunt for squishy American riflemen, and looks like they might have caught the scent of American blood, And yes, there we go. Riflemen getting gunned down, and oh dear, they might run straight past all of these Panzer Grenadiers with this automatic and semi-automatic weapons, and slowing them down. Latrodectus, in some places you might actually be called an asshole for that. But riflemen cut down, but a large force of American forces charging ahead. Riflemen, Rangers, all the good stuff. Bazooka rockets flying, submachine guns blaring, armored cars, assault guns, and semi-automatic rifles answering in return. And offensive infantry for the armored car. This one still taking a bit of fire. They're pulling back. The Rangers holding the line. The Panzer Grenadiers can't really advance. And quite a bit of munitions are flying their way. Trees getting blown to bits. Engineers now advancing under the cover of the Rangers. And it looks like Latrodectus has secured here in the east. A Wirbelwind leading the way for the Luftwaffe troops. Good show. Anti-tank on the advancing, ready to prove a threat to the armored cars. Very sneaky by Rommelslayer, although he seems to have not moved it far enough forwards. And has now pretty much revealed its presence to Latrodectus, who is now beginning to secure territory right there as well. But Rangers are advancing, getting gunned down, though the armored cars continue slowly pulling back, providing covering fire for the infantry. Good usage of them, in fact. Basically using them as support platforms for infantry, just rather than charging them ahead into the unknown and possibly straight into mines or an armed anti-tank gun. And Rommelslayer once more going for this point, hoping to once more cut off Latrodectus. Certainly not a bad idea. Medics still pulling in the wounded, but so far I don't believe there's an infantry team been recovered, but I might have been wrong. Haven't been able to keep an eye on it. And incendiary grenades burning the Rangers. And now the Panzer Grenadiers are able to rush in, but engineers are rushing right back at them, some with flamethrowers. Oh, not looking good for the Panzer Grenadiers, quickly pulling back. And armored cars charging in here, hoping to deal with those riflemen. And doing the job quite nicely. I believe that was a rifleman team cut down in its prime. Still, this point is currently not in the hands of Latrodectus, so once more, he is rather cut off from a lot of resources. Engineers and assault rifle equipped Panzer Grenadiers dueling for their lives. What shall Latrodectus need to do? Well, he needs to secure this territory, but at the same time his sort of focus on lots of light vehicles and a bit of armor is doing quite nicely. And the Marder 3 is proving to be quite a threat that is rather keeping Rommelslayer on the backside, thus giving the other units a bit more of an advantage. But now, with the anti-tank gun, Rommelslayer could be turning things around, although getting an armored tank depot could also be of quite some use. Trias enters up, which is also good, thus giving his troops even further fighting capability in the longer run. Luftwaffe troops pulling back together the armored cars. Another cannon crowd for Latrodectus to secure this territory once more. And defensive operations right there. Another cannon crowd on the way, but of course, unless this territory is recaptured, he can't get it out. Panzer Grenadiers could in fact be moving out, and there we go. Riflemen slowly advancing, so are the Rangers. And a mine hit by the Panzer Grenadiers, killing one and desperately wounding the rest. Barely any health left. And now the cannon crowd is ready after the one Panzer Grenadier was lost. And there we go, territory secured once more. Territorial advantage is looking slightly less in the favor of Rommelslayer, but he still holds it, and he still holds the majority of the victory points, and he certainly holds the center one, which is certainly going to give him the advantage of being able to sort of move from here to here, since of course the bridge is the best crossing between left and right. Armored car has a rifle from Rommelslayer. No armored, oh wait, armored skirts are up. Cannon crowd advancing, spotting the mines. Panzer Grenadiers moving in as well. Riflemen doing a bit of covering. Armored car advancing. And incendiary grenades on the riflemen, denying them the advantage. Panzer Grenadiers charging ahead, but can they do something against that armored car? Grenades being thrown at the Panzer Grenadiers, killing two outright. Rangers moving in as well. Heavy losses for Latrodectus' troops. And rather, I can't help but suspect that it might actually have been a better move to sort of move through here and towards, I mean from here to there. Thus giving him 2 points close to each other, thus allowing him to secure to continue his front, at least slightly more in the sort of this manner.
Anti-tank grenades are available to eliminate.
But that would at least be my opinion. But currently we are in fact seeing a front line rather adhering to the river, as I sort of noticed that is usually how it plays out. So again, always good to notice these things. It can help you in sort of partly and of course preparing for it, but of course also sort of figuring out, well, where are the weak spots, where can I attack, and how can I defend, and so on. Medics pulling in the wounded, armored cars moving forward, but so are a lot of rangers and some armored cars. And nothing to actually deal with the armored car, and the kitten crowd blown to bits. It's time to have a look at, oh dear, fog of war, not supposed to be on. Let us go return to Rommelslayer. Infantry, call in rangers. Whatever shall he be doing? Quite a bit of manpower. Could be calling in more rangers, I suppose. He already has 2. And small fight going on here. Rangers holding the line, leading the way, firing away as Panzer grenades are charging ahead across the open ground. Assault rifles, everything blaring. Quite the charge. Bazooka rockets flying, blowing everything to bits if they actually hit, though. Not really the sort of weapon you want to actually hit infantry with. Grenades being thrown, but they don't quite hit, and the Rangers are forced away with heavy casualties. For Rommelslayer and his 1st Infantry Division, and Riflemen run straight into the Wirbelwind, showing them what an anti-aircraft cannon can do to squishy flesh, and it's doing quite some nasty bits, forcing the Riflemen right away. But the center is still in the hands of the 1st Infantry Division, although Kitten Crowd is now again moving in, but this time cloaking up before it actually gets too close.
300 points.
Still no anti-tank assets for Latrodectus, actually something to deal with that armored car. Although it looks like the amount of free is pulling away, and looks like Latrodectus is finally shifting the axis of attack towards the center. About time. Armored car getting the 50 caliber machine gun. Panther grenades leading the charge, and anti-tank grenades ready, knocking out the armored car. Good move. You rarely expect anti-tank grenades. And in this case, it could even have looked like he might have been using an incendiary grenade, I suppose, but still, good usage. And oh dear, these riflemen could be cut down, slowed down, and slaughtered. A veteran team, 2 riflemen team lost for Rommelslayer. Oh, the inhumanity. Only 1 team of riflemen left. Tank depot going up, Rangers charging outwards. Most of the infantry left are Rangers. Looks like 1 team has been reformed so far of riflemen in the medic station. But a small victory for Mr. Latrodectus, and he's certainly denying Rommelslayer a bit of fuel and all that, despite Rommelslayer having, well, quite a bit of the map. He's in fact cutting off from some of the fuel. Good show there. Rangers and riflemen charging ahead from numerous angles. Panzer Grenadiers taking much too heavy fire. Trees blown to bits. Fire on the ground. And Panzer Grenadiers retreating. Armor cars could be used to support all. The Wirbelwind could. The Wirbelwind would certainly be slightly better in a defensive posture rather than the armored cars. Whatever shall happen. More Panzer Grenadiers moving in. The armored cars so far seem to have rather stopped doing anything, but now they're moving ahead, or are they? Yes, there we go, opening up from the other side of the gorge, the chasm, or the bridge, I suppose, whatever side you say. And the riflemen are taking some minor losses, but they're still holding the territory. Armored cars will have to advance, being very careful not to move within range of the Rangers' bazookas. Tank depot not really doing anything. Panzer Grenadiers getting ready, reinforced, patched up. And quite a lot of bazooka rockets connect with the bridge. Not quite the armored car, but one does. Kettenkrad getting ready to seize a bit of territory. Rommelslayer still holding the central point, despite having been slightly forced away. Latrodectus was unable to hold it. Quite unfortunately, despite being Luftwaffe, he could perhaps set up a flak feeling rather swiftly. That could have protected. But alas, and now the anti-tank gun is moving in, ready to throw back any assault. In this case, it might not be a bad idea to sort of shift the axis again. I mean, when you're sort of figuring, well, he's holding there, why not try there? And looks like Fallschirmjägers have arrived. 3rd Fallschirmjäger Regiment ready to provide the 2nd SS with some of its best troops. Good show. Might be seeing some FG-42s. Wirbelwind dueling off with Rangers. Oh dear, the Wirbelwind could be lost. Although looks like some of the Rangers found a nice shiny quarter beneath the tracks and run straight into it. It's a bit of an odd bug, actually. Rangers taking heavy losses due to that stupid mistake. Armored cars in the meanwhile charging ahead, knocking out the attack anti-tank gun very bold. Panzer grenades getting ready for an assault in the west. And the center could be used as well. Come on, Latrodectus, get moving. Although I do believe it's time for the mid-game analysis. What is the current situation? Well, currently the 2nd SS and Latrodectus could be doing a bit better. They knocked out the anti-tank gun, but still Rommelslayer is holding most of the map, most of the victory points. Although it's not holding most of the units, which could be to the advantage of the North Map Combat Group is soon to be ready to do some very nasty bits. Fallschirmjägers hiding here. Engineers moving in. Riflemen as well, although they are quite wounded. Could be an easy target for the Fallschirmjägers. Panzer grenades, I'm not sure what they will do. But Latrodectus needs to get moving here and here, I'd suspect. A Bergtiger would also be nice to sort of recover some of those lost vehicles so far. Rommelslayer, on the other hand, needs to get something a bit thicker armor than those M8s. Some tanks would be nice to sort of deal with all these squishy things that Mr. Latrodectus has. A medic station is of course a good show, and very good show indeed. Supply are good, and otherwise he basically needs to establish some defensive points around these 2 victory points, and at least that way ensure that he can at least drain Latrodectus of victory points if it comes to that. In particular, considering that Rommelslayer currently is lacking a bit. But let us return to the fight and see how it goes on.
We're losing ground out there.
Securing territory right there and there. All very quiet. No infantry to carry the fight towards the center. Now the Kampfgruppe company is up. Could mean Panzer 6. Fallschirmjägers charging ahead, opening up on the engineers with the FG-42s. Basically mean Fallschirmgewehr. It was intended as a sort of light machine gun to be used for Fallschirmjägers, but it could also be used as a battle rifle, I believe, which basically means it's a sort of automatic rifle. Yes, indeed, a bit of an assault rifle, an early variant, and riflemen getting gunned down on the retreat. Off-map combat group arriving. What should it be carrying? An anti-tank gun, more rangers, riflemen, and an M8, fully upgraded. Even in fact, yes, indeed, any armored vehicle called in with off-map combat groups, if it has upgrades, it will arrive fully upgraded. So in the case of M8, it gets it with 50 caliber machine gun and armored skirts, not a bad deal. And it's now moving in after the Fallschirmjägers, who will only be able to defend themselves with a single Panzerfaust shot. And there we go, moving in, opening up on the Fallschirmjägers. Fallschirmjägers finding away what they can. Panzerfaust hitting the M8. And a Fallschirmjäger is killed right there. Forces heading towards the center, and Hotchkiss light tanks have arrived. The 2nd SS apparently managed to secure some from a replacement battalion or something like that. They get themselves a tiny bit of armor. Stuka rockets flying through the air, and the M8 gets knocked out. My goodness. And let's just briefly pause it to explain something about on-map artillery. It works on this. You might wonder some of you, how is accuracy determined? Well, accuracy is determined on 2 things: range of between the artillery and the target, and also line of sight. And I do believe in this case we had a sort of decently short range, but also line of sight from the Fallschirmjägers, allowing them, the Hotchkiss, to get some pretty decent coordinates and actually hit. So there you go. Hopefully that might have answered some questions for some people. And yeah, really, time to return to Latrodectus, who is also floating quite a bit of manpower. Could be he's preparing to get the Panther. Rommelslayer pushing forwards in the east, while Latrodectus in the center knocking out the anti-tank gun. Very nice there. But not really holding any victory points, which is rather his main problem. Rangers holding the line, although some are running away. Armored cars and Marder 3 and some Luftwaffe troops are on the move, while the main force of the 17th SS is doing what it can in the west, suppressing rangers with Gewehr 43 fire, charging in with the assault rifles, clearing out those rangers up close. Grenades being lobbed, not managing much though. Now the riflemen will have to be facing off against the Panzer Grenadiers. And what is happening? Rangers moving in from the bridge and ambushing the Marder 3 while the rest of the force is mainly occupied with the forces here. Very good move by Rommelslayer, sneaking about, flanking and ambushing the Marder 3, thus hoping to deny Latrodectus his main anti-armor unit. Flamethrowers and riflemen with BARs engaging the Panzer Grenadiers right there. Although a counterattack is immediately going on there, Panzer Grenadiers are moving in to stop them. Veterancy 1 for these riflemen, goody goody. Panzer Grenadiers getting cut down. 1,000 manpower, and oh my goodness, Latrodectus is floating at quite an inordinate amount of resources. He needs to spend it. Main gun destroyed on the Marder 3. Could be, of course, that Latrodectus is utterly occupied and engrossed with what is going on. Certainly not impossible.
Attention, the enemy advances.
Funkwagen continuing to steal territory.
When are we going to retire this thing?
Hotchkiss nearby and asking for when it's going to be retired, and not right away anyways. The Hotchkiss being quite an old tank, about set in production in 35 in France, was rather worked on their principle, which didn't quite actually expect the Hotchkiss tanks to be sort of a highly maneuverable element. They had some problems in that the gunner was also the commander of the tank and also the loader, so pretty much one man had to do quite a bit of work, which rather made operating things rather difficult. Plus there were some problems with communication as well, which rather meant that while the Germans in the start by 1940 actually had the weaker tanks, they did have the better crewed ones, and they were better able to communicate, thus getting the advantage over the French ones.
We are losing ammunition depot.
But the Hotchkiss was in 1940 quite the exemplary light tank, but it did have its flaws which did go against it. Engineers and Rangers charging towards the center, quite an assault force in fact. What will it be able to do? Will it be able to overcome the forces of Latrodectus in the center? And there we go, Panther battle group is ready, but he doesn't have the population ready to summon it onto the field, to summon on the elite SS Panzer. Panzer Grenadiers facing off against the engineers. Assault rifle versus squishy engineers with flamethrowers, but the flamethrowers never really managed to do much. And doing a bit of work here, armored car, veterancy 3, 26 kills, quite the solid reconnaissance unit right there, and armored car. And quite a bit of offensive veterancy, increasing accuracy and rate of fire. Not a bad idea. And one thing to note about armored cars is that for each level of veterancy they actually gain a small health bonus. It doesn't matter if it's offensive or defensive, but they gain health. Engineers getting shot while medics are pulling out the other engineers. Latrodectus is pushing forward in the west, but Latrodectus never really seems able to hold more than 1 point at a time, which is quite unfortunate. And Hotchkiss firing away, detonating the mine, clearing out the entire area. In fact, good show. And looks like Latrodectus might be able to secure territory. Butterfly bombs ready, and we are seeing Henschel Panchernackers getting ready as well. Strafing run, securing the central victory point. What the hell was that? I wonder about that too. But all very, very, very quiet. At the moment, 40 Megas holding the center with a bit of support from other Panzer Grenadiers. But still lacking the population to actually see some moment and call in those Panthers. And looks like another Wirbelwind has in fact arrived on the field, but isn't really there to do much. Marder 3 discovered by the Rangers. It hasn't even been repaired. Oh dear. But armored cars are there to save the day and immediately drop a few of those Rangers. Riflemen are nearby as well though, making things a lot more perilous. Large Ranger assault going in towards the center. Looks like Mr. Rommelslayer has called upon a rather substantial Ranger force. In fact, almost an entire platoon of Rangers. And the Marder 3 did not knock out, but the armored cars are getting a bit of vengeance on the Rangers, cutting them down as they are retreating, firing away with glee and malice. Will the Rangers make it out of there? Doesn't look like it. No, he did not. He died. The Fallschirmjägers got the kill. Rangers getting bombarded. Wirbelwind ready to protect the Hotchkiss with its life.
Americans are seizing territory.
Still no Panthers. And Latrodectus is simply unable to keep securing territory at a rate. At this stage, they can actually get him the Panthers. Bit unfortunate. Again, floating quite a bit of manpower fuel. In this case, I'm pretty sure he's suspecting again he wants those Panthers, but at the same time, he could be using some of all that surplus resources for mines, perhaps. You know, he has butterfly mines now. Use those. Perhaps he could, oh, I don't know, get some upgrades for his Panzer Grenadiers. Group seal. Faster capture rates. That would certainly be nice. All veteran sergeants. There's plenty of upgrades, but sadly, it looks like Latrodectus isn't getting a single one. And now Rangers are charging ahead with support from this German, which has arrived to make things very miserable for Latrodectus and the 2nd SS. Panzer Grenadiers getting gunned down, doing their best to hold the line. Incendiary grenades flying through the air. And a Panzer Grenadier team absolutely slaughtered. Quite unfortunate. Panthers are finally able to be summoned onto the field, and there we go.
Panzer, we must defend the enemy's advances on our victory points.
But I'd still recommend getting some upgrades, or at least have done that a lot earlier for his Panzer Grenadiers, so they can get a lot tougher. And now the Panthers are moving in. Panzerkampfwagen 5 opening up. Had a few flaws in the beginning. Yes, it was a strong tank, but in the beginning it certainly had some teething problems. In particular, the engine was quite flammable in the beginning, and if it sort of went off-road, there was actually a pretty decent chance that the engine would catch on fire on its own without actually needing anything to actually hit it. Let's talk about things about the Panther, but then again the T-34, which was sort of the inspiration before the Germans said, well, we can do that a lot better, had also quite a few teething problems. In particular, the T-34 was quite fond of taking its crew with it when it was about to blow up,
100 points.
which of course isn't the sort of thing talked about much. But finally, Panthers, finally a bit of armor superiority, but still not much luck with securing point. But there we go, Kettencraft securing the central victory point again. Panzer Grenadiers getting ready, but lacking the population for it. Again, will he be going for upgrades? No, he won't. Again, I'm rather disappointed in that. He has all the buildings, he might as well get his Panzer Grenadiers as tough as possible. What?
Would you like to upgrade the crews? That's what it sees, sir.
And why is he splitting up his Panthers? That's a bit off. But anti-tank guns getting ready. Rangers as well. A few anti-tank guns sort of hiding about here. Luftwaffe troops could pick it up and use it against the Americans, or at least deny them it. And why isn't he using butterfly bombs to actually protect his victory points? That would be absolutely brilliant. Could also use it to make it much harder to take that anti-tank gun. American troops retreating. Panther opening up on the Sherman. Sherman looking to get out of there, but it's simply getting hit a lot. Armored car hitting a mine, it seems. And looks like the Americans are making a dash for something, but still. Why isn't he using butterfly bombs? Come on, Latrodectus. Don't disappoint the Fatherland now. You've done quite well. Well, then again, could have done much more well with butterfly bombs and upgrading your Panzer Grenadiers. And now he's going. Rommelslayer is pushing ahead for both victory points that are not in his hands at the moment. Come on, Latrodectus, counterattack. Fallschirmjägers engaging the riflemen. Riflemen moving in for the kill. Taking up position in the barn. No, they are not. Having heard the stories, they shall not enter the old empty barn. Riflemen and Fallschirmjägers engaging right here. Who shall be the victor? Once more, Rommelslayer goes for the central victory point. Riflemen charging head right into the FG-42s, getting slaughtered again. Do not charge into automatic weapons. The FG-42, unlike the LMG-42, is an incredibly lethal weapon. And now engaging the Rangers, and Latrodectus is just standing about. He's not trying to secure territory. He's calling in Henschel support on this point. I mean, One thing to note, Henschels only react on armor and sort of anti-tank guns, stuff like that. They don't hit infantry. I mean, sure, they fire a bit randomly, and that could hit infantry, but their target shots and the reason for them to appear requires armor, I mean. But Rangers are hitting the butterfly bombs, taking hits. Fallschirmjägers doing their best to hold the point, but retreating in the face of the Rangers. Rangers getting slain by the butterfly bombs. And finally using it, I might add. But he certainly could have been using it a lot more earlier and a lot more gratuitously. I mean, you might as well use it properly when you already got it. I mean, and plus you have 500 munitions, or at least he had. Lay down as many butterfly bombs as you can. Sherman opening up, killing a single Panzer Grenadier. And over this time, it's time to return to Rommelslayer. How shall Latrodectus hold up? Rommelslayer once more going for the central victory point. Latrodectus seems a bit unsure again. I mean, he has a lot of Panzer Grenadiers, but he seems to have been neglecting the whole upgrading them with all of the buildings. Quite unfortunate, whereas Rommelslayer does seem to have held on with the sort of preparing for the long fight. Now having armor as well, although the Panthers are a bit of a problem with anti-tank guns and Rangers and sticky bombs. He ought to be able to wear it out if used properly. And still he has been holding most of the map for quite some time, wresting map control from the hands of Latrodectus and the 2nd SS. Barbed wire being laid down here to sort of prevent any sort of direct charges through there, certainly not a bad idea. Panther units heading towards the east. Engineers forced away by the Wirbelwind. Rangers charging ahead, getting gunned down by the Panzer Grenadiers. And Rangers are now forced away. Looks like Latrodectus might be able to turn things around if he thinks through properly, but then again, Rommelslayer is already on the move, counter-attacking Latrodectus' forces, even while they're moving out to take one of his points. Good move there, certainly going to catch Latrodectus off guard that way. And Panzer Grenadiers are taking quite some losses. And the Henschel moves in, opening up. But it is not fast enough. And the Sherman mostly dodges it and deflects the anti-tank grenades being lobbed at it. Quite unfortunate by Latrodectus right there. You have to be careful with your strafing runs. Time them properly and understand when to use them. But pushing on in the west instead, although seems a bit haphazardly. Hotchkiss nearby, but it's not firing at all. It does have rockets, but it looks like Latrodectus has forgotten it. Armored cars are still alive, one with 35 kills, absolutely marvelous.
We're losing a strategic sector.
Anti-tank gun opening up in return. Armored car charging towards the center. Oh dear. Hoping to perhaps knock out the anti-tank gun. But no, he might lose it, he might lose it. Yes, indeed, lost the armored car, quite tragic. Panthers moving in towards the east, opening up an infantry, but they might get sticky bombed. No, instead the infantry might get squished. No, what shall we happen? Will we see squishing or no? Sticky bombs on the rear of the Panther. Damaged engine.
Infantry squad lost.
Infantry unit lost, anti-tank gun cleared out. And Rommelslayer sacrificing a Ranger team to reman the anti-tank gun. Knocks out the armored car. And Latrodectus sends in more, pretty much all of his infantry forces, at least not the ones that are Luftwaffe, into the fight. Only leaving behind the Luftwaffe to repair here. And M18 has moved in, knocking out the Wirbelwind. Hotchkiss severely damaged. Sherman finding themselves in a sticky situation. Quite a few Panthers. I don't think this Sherman will make it out of there. Rommelslayer. And there we go. Panther knocked out. I mean Sherman knocked out by the Panther. M18 ready. Anti-tank gun securing the west and central flanks. Well, central area. and getting ready for any Panthers pressing through from the east, but no, they're not. 42 points left for Latrodectus. Fallschirmjägers holding the lines. Butterfly bombs being dropped quite generously right here, it seems. Looks like these riflemen might lose to the Fallschirmjägers. Fallschirmjägers are quite potent infantry, even without the FG-42s. They should not be underestimated at any turn. Although they shouldn't be overestimated either, as they do have some weaknesses of their own. And Fallschirmjägers and Panzer grenades coming under fire. And in fact, an actual flamethrower is there to provide actual fire. Panzer grenades getting scorched, but making out of the incendiary grenades being used against the barn, setting it on fire. Rangers getting suppressed as they hit butterfly bombs. And more incendiary grenades being used against the old empty barn. Well, not quite empty barn. Panzer grenades nearby, but they're not moving in to support. Fallschirmjägers holding in the line, coming under fire from the Rangers, fighting away with the Thompson submachine guns, while the Fallschirmjägers answer with their FG-42s. M18 having a bit of small fight here against perhaps a Panther. Yes, indeed. Although looks like the M18 is trying to engage the Panther from the front. Very bad choice. Fallschirmjäger losing desperately to the Rangers, not looking good, and forced to retreat. M18 knocked out. Riflemen hitting butterfly bombs, getting suppressed. 2 Panzer Grenadiers, very lonely, counter-attacking, although it might be a bit too late now. Hoping to catch the Rangers off guard, perhaps. Incendiary grenade being used, actually. And catching the Rangers right in the middle of it, and the Rangers are not moving out. Oh dear, but they're instead getting into the barn. Central point is quite fortified. Looks like the last fight might be right here in the west. Fallschirmjäger fighting, Panther trying to move in, or is it? No, it's been awfully damaged. Heavy machine gun on the spot, my goodness. Rangers losing in the east and being cut down utterly, thus meaning that Rommelslayer has lost all of his Rangers, but he's regained quite a bit of infantry in different ways, I suspect. Probably from off-map combat groups. And anti-tank gun and M18 opening up on the Panther, knocking out, but Hotchkiss rockets flying through the air. Another Panther arrives, but could get knocked out by the anti-tank gun, which is now veterancy 2. And in the fire, the Panther fights bravely. But will it be enough? And no, it wasn't. M18 knocked it out. Now the Luftwaffe troops charging ahead. But they are coming under fire from the M18 with his 50 caliber machine gun. Fallschirmjägers hitting a mine, almost dead. Things are utterly collapsing for the 7th SS. Troops dying, tanks getting blown up. And a GG and another Panther battle group, but it is simply too late. And a GG indeed, victory for the 1st Infantry Division, despite the best attempts of the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich in its attempt to enact Operation Lüttich. It simply got bogged down. Rommelslayer was simply too swift. He kept harassing about him, taking points, cutting him off, and basically holding most of the map, and Latrodectus simply couldn't keep up. He couldn't take enough territory, and he made a few mistakes when he was floating simply too much resources instead of getting upgrades for his Panzer Grenadiers when it could have mattered. That was rather the unfortunate thing, perhaps getting a more cannon cross, but still, I mean, for example, upgrades like the one that allowed his Panzers to take territory faster would have been a much greater asset much earlier on, but sadly he didn't get it, and rather things like that cost him in the game in the long run, although it wasn't without good attempts. And certainly Rommelslayer was looking very bad at some points, having taken quite a beating, but in the end Rommelslayer was more prepared for the long fight, the long haul, and was able to do much more damage and prevent Latrodectus from getting more resources, despite the fact that Latrodectus constantly had that Funkwagen right there undetected, and certainly ensure that Latrodectus would have had a lot more fuel than he might otherwise have had. So there you go. Hope you enjoyed this fight. If you did, why not subscribe or tell your friends, and if you didn't, well, why not send in a replay of your own. This is Imperial Dane saying cheers.